Matthew LeDrew is a 33-year-old writer from Norman's Cove. 10 years ago, he founded Engine Books, a small press company that deals in genre writing, like science fiction, fantasy, and similar genres. LeDrew himself has written a total of 17 books and says he's been writing since childhood.
Can you tell me what first got you interested in writing in the beginning?
Ninja Turtles?
Really?
Probably. I don't know. I remember I was always really imaginative as a child. And yeah, I think the first time I wrote a story, I was 4 years old, and it took me a week, and it was 1 page long. And it was one of my Ninja Turtle figures had lost its arm, and so I wrote a story explaining why Donatello didn't have an arm anymore, so that it would make sense within the confines of the little universe I'd made with my toys.
Yeah.
Which is a really weird thing to do as a child, but I really liked writing stories, and I kept writing. I never wrote stories about Ninja Turtles again.
LeDrew wrote his first official book after finishing his schooling at MUN and CNA, but says its sci-fi thriller feel were points stacked against it in getting published here.
I believe there was a brief pitch to a publisher here who said that they only publish things set in Newfoundland. And I briefly toyed with the idea of just change, because it's set in Maine, like a small town in Maine, but because I've never lived in Maine, it's probably a lot more. There are some things that are very Newfoundlandy about it and stuff like that. So I probably could tweak it and change it to that, even though I wouldn't have liked to. And I'm glad I didn't, because in the years since, when I've spoken to other people, there's always another excuse. It's we don't publish things not set in Newfoundland, and then it's, well, we don't publish science fiction, period, or thrillers, period, or XYZ. So I'm glad I didn't make that change then, because there would have just been another roadblock, I think. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was because I wasn't interested in publishing or writing what the publishers here did, and I felt like I was too isolated here in Newfoundland to get the attention of the publishers away that would be interested in genre fiction. I felt kind of trapped in this, like, stuck between two worlds, and I decided to just start a genre publisher here in the province to solve that problem not only for myself, but for other people, hopefully.
LeDrew admits that when first starting up the company, he was worried there wouldn't be a big enough community here for the genres they specialize in.
But somewhere in the back of my head, I kind of knew, just from my generation, that, like, the authors that me and my friends talked about was J.K. Rowling and Stephen King and to a lesser extent James Patterson, but that kind of, like, I didn't hear growing up in high school about Newfoundland authors. The closest one would be Ed Kavanagh when I was much younger with his Amanda Greenleaf books, but that was aimed for like grade 6. But in high school I never heard once of a Newfoundland author. They were just not on my radar. And that's not my fault as a child. Like, the marketing is supposed to reach me. I'm not supposed to reach the marketing. But I did know every time Stephen King was going to put out a new book. And so I was kind of aware that there was a hunger for it that we weren't meeting. And I just kind of was driven to find that audience. And I'm very grateful to Sci-Fi and the Rock, because I don't think that's a gathering spot of people who are interested in science fiction, fantasy, and horror. So that was an ideal spot for the type of genre fiction we were putting out. I'm not sure how great we would have done starting off without that. There were the first few years when we weren't in any stores or anything like that, when Sci-Fi and the Rock made our year, like when we were first starting out. So it was very good timing that those two things happened at the same time.
LeDrew also spoke about how Newfoundland's current economic climate has affected business.
The economy being in a downswing has hurt, but it's also helped in a really weird way. It's hurt in that a lot of the smaller bookstores are closing up shop, and those are the ones that an independent or small press publisher has had the easiest time to deal with. But honestly, it helps in that they're willing to try things they weren't before when the economy was doing good, to get people in the door and do mutually beneficial things to save their business, like have write-ins, or have like not only book signings, which is the normal thing, but do writing classes, and then at the end of the, like, do a writing class for free in your bookstore after hours, and then if people buy books when they're on their way out, they do, and if they don't, they will come back later another time and do it. Things like inventive things like that to increase business for everyone. As the economy suffers, people get creative.
LeDrew also says he's faced writer's block many times before, but has developed his self-discipline over the past decade tremendously.
It's just been too long of like, okay, it's this need. Like, I love telling stories. I feel bad when I don't reach a word count in a day. Like, I feel like I've let myself down. It's been a lot of years now, so it's just wanting it to work, like wanting to tell the stories. And I've got more stories in my head sometimes than I think I have years left to tell them. Like some people on their deathbed worry about like the girl they never kissed. Some people worry about the person that they never said they're sorry to. When I'm on my deathbed, I'm going to worry about the story I didn't get a chance to write.